Hi all, Tim here. As you can tell by my background, I'm not at home, and it has been a little while since I put anything up, so I need to get back on track. And, like they say, sometimes life and work get in the way. I was on a lengthy 9 or 10 week business trip out here in Arizona, spending some time with family, and it is 105 degrees, so fun in the sun. Wanted to get this up though. I had an opportunity not too long ago to talk to a really good friend of mine, Seth White. I met Seth shortly after I started here at Nexthink. Went over to London to help him with some opportunities, do a little of the coaching that I've done over the years here to help our sales folks understand the buyer and the pains that end user compute has, so that we can be more consultative in our sales process. And he soaked it up like a sponge. He took off, and he's been a superstar at Nexthink for many years. And now he's decided to branch out and start his own full-time gig, and I fully support him. Had a chance to talk with him a little bit about the career journey and also his new venture, Ellipsys. So take a listen and hope you enjoy. Thanks. Hey all, it's Tim. I'm here with my good friend Seth. Seth, we've known each other for a while, and Seth just started a new venture and wanted to jump on with you, Seth, and catch up a little bit. It's been a while since we talked. We saw each other at a couple of events recently, but let's start with a quick intro, man. What's a little bit of background and who you are and how you got started, and just a quick intro.
No, yeah, thanks for having me, Tim. So, yeah, no, the as things currently stand, I'm the founder of Ellipsys, which we'll get into at some
Yeah.
point. But if we rewind the clock approximately 10 years, which is when we first met, I had joined Nexthink in the enterprise capacity to introduce the Nexthink digital employee experience platform to large enterprises in the UK. After doing that for about 2 years, had the opportunity to be relocated to North America to continue that journey with Nexthink and to continue to provide and to supply large enterprises with Nexthink, and had a real interesting experience undergoing that process, really. I always make the joke that my plan when I first joined in Nexthink was to just do my job as best as I can, and if an opportunity came to go to the US, it would be unlikely that I would turn it down. Chance would have it that that did come my way.
Yeah.
And took a bit of a leap of faith. Kind of did the traditional sell everything, moved to the US with a couple of young children, and then, kind of expecting the process of potential permanent residency to not take too long, and then you can kind of reevaluate what you want to do, right? You're in America, there's all these opportunities, but luck would have it, though, for me, it took many years before I gained permanent residency. And so it became this interesting thing where I was always very, very happy at Nexthink, and in a way, knowing that you technically can't leave the company or go do something else, it actually created a whole world of new opportunities and experiences that led me to where I am now. And that really comes down to a kind of a part of the topic of our conversation is, what was that and how did that come to be? But ultimately, when you typically sell software into a large enterprise, you move on to other things within 2 or 3 years. But I got to kind of stay with my customers for years and started to really become passionate about understanding how they were going to successfully adopt the technology, and transform IT, and then ultimately evolve the business. And that was really what became key for me. So that's kind of the sort of shortened version, but yeah.
Cool. Yeah, some of my earlier recollections starting at Nexthink, I was coming over from a customer, jumping back into the vendor world. I was at a hardware vendor years ago and jumping back in to the vendor side, the dark side. I came over to the UK, paired up with you and a number of other reps. My goal was to take my knowledge as a buyer and help the the company and the team as sellers understand who's buying the product, what's the value cases. And, we connected in those early days. I think you were also early in your career, sales career. What drew you into Nexthink when you saw it and you took the first job at Nexthink over in the UK? What was it about either the company or the product that said, I gotta go here?
Well, it's a really good question, and I'd be lying if I said, "Hey, it was the immediate excitement around the technology." Right?
Yeah.
No, the technology. I'll give some context. Then I'll give more of a story. But I had been with another company before that, and it was my first software company, and I just was not really that excited by the software. I won't go into company details, but ultimately it just wasn't. It didn't. But it was my first, again, trying to get out there and show some success and prove my value. So, but then when I came across Nexthink, the first thing that actually did I really liked was when I had an interview with a gentleman by the name of Stephen Little, who a lot of people know at Nexthink, very successful leader, good friend, and mentor at the time. And even now, I guess. But yes, Steve, I was sitting in the interview with him, and he had a really nice watch on. And I remember sitting there thinking, because for all my jobs before then in my sales career, they'd been a bit of a letdown. The anticipated opportunities or learnings and the people I'd worked for, everything kept falling short. And I thought, well, look, maybe my judgment at the time was very simple back when I had some hair, but it was, he's got a really nice watch and he seems very polished and he seems to know what he's talking about. And I really liked him. And that was, and along with him and another gentleman named Tim Pollard at the time, who was the global sales director at Nexthink. We know Tim. And that was what got me going. But then, yes, you're right. The thing that really excited me after that was actually looking at the technology as well and seeing what we're dealing with here is something which is disruptive. It's a paradigm shift. And at the time, it was, this technology was providing like this previously unobtainable perspective of how IT is being consumed. And I remember just thinking, because I'd sold IPVPN networks before, I'd been in the cell phone space, then in a bit of software, and I started to see, hey, this is great. And those two things together kind of said to me, yeah, take a swing and go with these guys. And that's where it all started. Before there was ever a digital employee experience quadrant or anything like that, it was a very evangelistic type sales process. And there were some staggering great learnings along the way, a bit of pain as well, but it was went really, really well.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I've been evangelizing for nearly 10 years now. It's the best part of my job. But let's maybe get away a little bit from the Nexthink specific stuff and talk about your kind of journey through your career. The next move, as you said, was to come to the US. Not an easy thing. It's tough enough to go visit another country, never mind pick up your whole family and move. So what were some of the challenges that you had from kind of the family side and the business side and the green card? I mean, you went through a lot to finally get your feet under you. How'd it go?
Yeah, we're going to get personal. Yeah, no. So it's very difficult because I had lived in the US as a teenager from 12 to 18 years old. I'd come back to the UK, been back for about 10 years before I went back again, I guess, to live. And I think the first thing that was particularly difficult is it sounds very simple, but when you're making such a big commitment and not knowing what the outcome's going to be, that's kind of the definition of a risk. And not only was it sort of an emotional risk, of course, there was my wife, who's obviously very close with her family, who are fantastic. That was difficult. There's my family involved, and it really was. It was a real big leap. So in that sort of on that the family front is a difficult one, and then there was the sort of I did have people say to me, the US is the most competitive place in the world. You don't want to go there. It's and I finally leaned on the fact of it was sort of almost like my instincts were telling me, like something screaming inside of me, if you don't take this very small window of opportunity, it may never come again. And so, yeah. And then on a financial side, this wasn't, this was back in the days where, there weren't like big relocation packages. Nexthink
Right.
was really small. I sold our home. We spent all of the equity we had in that home on the move itself to make it at least somewhat comfortable. And then you land, and then you have, a wife I've got an 18-month-old son where she's about to give birth to my second child. And there's not the traditional infrastructure of family to help. So my wife's having to look after 2 kids under 2 on her own as I'm traveling all over the place, trying to make something work that might not. Right. And then even when I did move, another piece of the puzzle was there was no official plan to be sponsored for permanent residency either. So you've not only taken this risk, you don't even know, technically when I landed, I was living in the US tenuously. There was no official path, and I had to kind of be like, well, let's just see how it goes. And so, but yeah, that was really hard, I guess, to do that and then kind of culturally adapt. But but on the flip side, there was some staggering support from the Nexthink business. There wasn't a single person who wasn't willing to help in every angle. So I also would say I had some advantages. We had some family in Utah, which was very helpful. I had a network of friends who I'd known many years ago. And there was a direct flight from Salt Lake to London Heathrow that had just been formed, which made the visits over the years, which have been many, made it good as well. So yeah, no, I can't complain. But yeah, it was tough, I think. And then the other thing that made it really difficult was it was the reality that you're in a sales role. It's a performance job. If you don't perform, not only do I, technically could lose my job, it's like the consequences are you're now going to have to uproot your family and go all the way back to the UK. So it was really, it felt at the time really stressful, but in hindsight, I'd say one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. And I'm very glad that I kind of followed that feeling to go and do it. And so, yeah, I did.
Yeah, I think that phrase is fitting, and I've heard it a lot, that sales is a performance profession, and it's kind of got that double meaning, right? You've got to perform. You've got to. Everything is all about your ability to sell. The sales arm of a company drives revenue, so it's got to be performance. But you also have to be able to. Not that you're acting or faking anything, but you have to be able to perform in front of people. Right. You've got to bring the right message at the right time and know where the opportunity is, know what the customer is all about. So there's an element of performance there as well. As you kind of learn that profession, what were some of the big career milestones that you hit? And I've asked this of other people, when they might not seem big at the time, but when you look back and you say, wow, that I remember that moment, that was the game changer for me. Or was your career over the last 10, 12, 15 years kind of just a linear ramp? When you look back?
Yeah, no, not linear at all. Life isn't linear, right? There's and there are a few things. So there was there were a couple things that happened, and I think some of them can be more specific around the Nexthink products as well, actually, which was quite helpful. And I guess the message behind this is around sort of, don't be afraid to experiment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look back and think, wow, we actually didn't really know what we were even sort of selling. I guess we did. We knew the technology, but we didn't know how it fitted or resonated.
Right.
And I remember back in, it was early 2017, and I was sitting with a great guy by the name of Matthew Aylard. He was an absolutely phenomenal solutions consultant. Has gone on to do amazing things at MongoDB. And we were doing an engagement with Deloitte, right, who are now a Nexthink customer. And this was just pivotal to me. And it made me realize the power of just simply a simple conversation. And I said to him, I go, Matt, whenever you talk about Nexthink, right, the product, I said, you seem to like jump from networking to security to desktop engineering, all these different parts of IT. I go, does this mean that like Nexthink's valuable for like everyone in IT? And I thought he'd go, no. He goes, yeah, absolutely. Mm. And I was like, wait, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, it's actually really rare that happens. And I said, well, we've just started this engagement with Deloitte. why don't we go and get in front of every single IT team and the director involved of that part of the IT organization and present Nexthink to them to be involved in the proof of concept to understand, and he goes, well, could be risky. I go, yeah, and this was another thing, could be risky going and showing your software to every single part of the IT organization to try and maybe get some buy-in and see if you can help solve their problems. But that's another lesson that I learned at this point was you can sometimes play to protect your downside, right? Let's protect the one or two people we know who like it. And the ultimate loss there is that if that fail, if you try and protect that downside too much, you're not playing to win big. And we thought, okay, if we stay here and this engagement doesn't turn into an agreement, and then okay, we've played it safe, but we kind of lose small. But what if we played big? What if we really, because we believe in the platform, we believe in the concept, what if we went and took this everywhere? And we were like, let's do it. So we went and did it. And after a series of, I think it was like 79 meetings or something in a space of 12 months, we had every single IT department within that business saying, we want our hands on this. And things worked out. And that agreement happened to kind of conclude on the 28th of December, I think it was 2017, after I just landed in the US. So it worked out great. So that was a huge one for me in sort of understanding the application of a digital employee experience tool as it relates to the wider IT organization. The other one, which was transformative, was then once I'd gone through that process, was then saying, okay, if a technology is really powerful in this capacity, as I've done it here in the UK and a few others, this process, does it translate into other parts of the world? What's the mindset like out there? I don't know. Again, play for the upside, go and take that story and translate it. And then as it would happen, we were very successful in bringing Nexthink to lots of the largest enterprises. And then I think the final one actually involves another, and there's so many people who have been formative for me in my career. The other one was seeing, it sounds weird because it's not necessarily something that impacts me because I'm naturally a bit more extroverted, but was actually seeing, watching different personalities perform really well. Some and understanding that not everybody's the same, but you can still perform really well. And I grew this a greater appreciation for people doing things in a different way, but still getting great results and respecting the insights. So, for example, there was a friend of mine in Nexthink named John Whitmore, who is now founding Ellipsys with me, and he's heavily involved. John Whitmore was fundamental in sort of. We came from very different backgrounds, but we saw the same problem, but from a completely different lens. But nevertheless, the problem to solve was consistent. And that was interesting to me. It's like you don't have to have a certain type of personality or experience to sometimes see the same opportunity or problem to solve. And that was powerful. And so therefore we've grown very close, and John's doing fantastic as well here at Ellipsys. So yeah, those are just a few examples. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, and there's some common themes there. I watched a bunch of videos from John Cleese, Monty Python, and one of the Monty Python guiding principles about the point he made was the key to learning and the key to being successful is the freedom to fail, the freedom to play, the freedom to be creative. And he likened it to a child. When a child goes out and they're playing in the yard, they don't have a plan, and there's no fear of any failure. What goes through their mind is, hey, what happens if I go do this? Or what happens if I go do that? And if it doesn't do what they want it to do, they do something else. And that's exactly what you described is what happens if I get them all together in the same room, right? The risk could be I'm just multiplying the number of people who could say no, right? I get more people in the room for a veto, but you also have more people in the room with budget to share. You also have more use cases. You've got more support and more internal champions. So that ability to just go play and be creative, I think is pretty cool to learn along the way. You are probably one of, if not the most successful person over at least my career at Nexthink in the ability to connect with customers and to turn that into career success. I'll ask you a question that will push you maybe push your humble side away. But what sets you apart? What makes your sales technique different? Why are you kind of a unique animal that way?
Okay, no, so no, it's a great question. So I think the things that I would, it's weird. It's funny because over the time as I interviewed people coming into Nexthink,
Right.
um, I think sometimes in the sales world there is naturally the propensity to say, I'm confident, right? Or so when reps they want to project themselves and say, look, yeah, I'm confident, so therefore that leads well into in sales. Sure, that works. You need to have some ability and confidence in your own ability. But there are two principles that I at least have found have worked for me at least, and then I'll go into a few others. One is actually having some humility.
Mm.
Um, it's easy. It sounds simple. Say be humble. Well, everyone says they're humble. No, you'll be absolutely amazed how many people think they're humble and they're not.
Mm.
And it's one of the things that I found that I did. I'm naturally quite an inquisitive person. So I always kind of like to imagine looking at an object on a desk. I'll try and look at it from every single possible angle. And when I know what the end goal is, right? And the end goal of selling Nexthink, right, is it's actually it's a very good goal. Everyone wins. Your customers
Mm.
win. It's not like you're selling them into a Ponzi scheme. You're actually
Right.
trying to. So therefore, any of your motives to make that happen, they're not bad, right? So there are a couple of things. So one is having the humility to first allow yourself to be molded by the people who have been successful before you. Right. When I was learning to even position do my first pitch around Nexthink, I would drag Steve Little into every single meeting. I would do the first slide, he'd do the next four. The next meeting, I'd do 2 slides, he'd do the next 2.
Right.
And it's just that having the humility to say, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know the answer. That's one, because then you actually absorb knowledge really freely and in a really genuine manner. You're not trying to pretend to ask questions to sound like you care, because you won't ever actually use it. So being humble and saying, look, I don't know. I know I can get there, but I just need to get the answers. And then on the flip side of that, though, there is also trusting yourself, right? For me, there are things that I've done over the years, in Nexthink and now even starting in Ellipsys, which would raise eyebrows or turn people's heads and may not be seen as popular. But the reality is you do have to trust yourself, because if you don't, you're going to let other people's sometimes bad advice push you off the edge of a cliff. You have to take ownership and say, look, no, I'm going to trust myself, and if I fail, I'm going to then just let that stick. So that's the other thing. So the first thing I say is ultimately humility. The second one is patience. One of the biggest variables, at least that I've seen so far in my career, is that people do not allow time to do its thing. So many people will join a company 1 year in, 2 years in, and say, I'm not having an impact, and then leave. It's like, you're not going to have a massive impact in 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 years, right? You're there to slowly become what you need to be to have an impact. It doesn't happen immediately.
Mm.
And so I'm not going to lie, though. My career out the gate, my goal was always to shortcut the system. Right? So I started selling cell phones, and then I was like, nah, screw that. I'm going to go into enterprise sales. So I had to kind of, massage a few items in my interviews, but got into enterprise sales, and it was going to, you have to sometimes, you fly. You don't want to fly too close to the sun, but maximize the opportunities you have. So then it was, going out there and having patience and allowing it. So at my time at Nexthink, people will say, hey, you've done well, and that's great. I didn't close my first significant agreement for 2 years. People seem to forget that. Now, was there a lot leading up to that? Yeah, there were. There were lots of things that I was doing, which was just refining me. And I knew at some point it was going to crack. And in hindsight, I can see what happened. So that's it. I would say humility. I would say have patience. And then I think the third one, And this is one that, for me, I've always said if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, I probably would have really enjoyed the world of recruitment because I have
Yeah.
a fascination with individual career development. I don't know why. It's just I find it fascinating. As I'm when I look at my customers and they are observing and they're wanting to partner with someone or a business to consider buying technology from or through or with me, whatever it may be, these are people, they're taking a risk, right? They are taking a risk, whether you like it or not. They are spending money which is not theirs to go and
Right.
deliver value which they don't currently have. And they are entrusting everything you're telling them with that. So the other thing that I think has really helped me is actually the ability to kind of look at things from other people's perspective. So my customers, when it's their careers on the line, one of the greatest pieces of satisfaction I've had is seeing other people's careers go through the roof
Mm.
because they decided to take that leap and do that. And so people feeling like you actually care is actually, I would say, is really important. You know, one of my favorite quotes, there is no what is it? The to be trusted is a greater compliment than it is to be loved, right?
Mm.
It's a really powerful concept, and for me, there are various forms of currency. Trust is my most important one. I've not been perfect with it, but either way, I think that's the key. And that those three things combined, I think you can be fairly dangerous if you let time do its thing.
Yeah, a couple of things to tack on to that. I'll vouch for the career changing element of it. It changed when I became a customer and made that purchase. It is a risk buying a
Yeah,
large enterprise platform and needing to not only implement it. The techies always just want to, configure it, design it, deploy it, but then you've got to operationalize it and you've got to get the value that you set out to justify the purchase of the software. And if and when it goes bad, it can be career limiting. Implementing Nexthink was the best thing that happened for my career at the Hartford, and then making the move here just allowed me to continue to advance. The other thing, though, I'll say, when I first started working with you, the one thing that I saw you do that others weren't doing was a vast amount of preparation. We sat in, I think we were in Spain at the time, working on a deal for a large antivirus company, and
mm-hmm.
you had a legal notepad, 14-inch, the 8.5 by 14,
Yeah,
page after page after page of planning for the next call in a way that other people weren't planning. Other people were planning, who do I need to have on the call? Which PowerPoint deck am I going to use? Which filled up the middle of the call? And then what do I need to get at the end of the call? You were planning for every possible contingency. Page
yeah,
one was, if we talk about it in this way, here's what I'm going to do. Page two was, if it goes sideways and goes this way, here's what I'm going to do. And that
yeah.
level of planning and detail in advance, I wasn't seeing from anybody else. So
No,
kudos
no,
without a
no,
doubt to that.
thank you. And I think one of my favorite things I saw in a video recently. It was it sounds cheesy, but it was Jeff Bezos, but he made a very good point, and
Yeah.
so I'll repeat it. Was you if you have a gift, it's not something to be proud of until you've worked on it, right? So for me, naturally, I find I'm fairly comfortable in communicating in a way which, hopefully people don't fall asleep on, right? And so I thought if I'm able to project myself and emphasize certain things in a negotiation or presentation, that comes naturally to me. So if that comes naturally, that's fine, but that's just a gift. To make it something I'm proud of, I have to prepare so that I can focus on using that gift, if that makes
Right.
sense. Right. So when I would prepare like that, I know exactly what you were talking about. It was so that I wrote down all the different outcomes so that I could, in an articulate manner,
Mm-hmm.
explain exactly what I wanted to say without having to worry about getting the words out there.
Right.
I mean, it's a form of preparation, simply a form of humility.
Yep.
Don't assume you're going to be able to shoot from the hip every single time. You might be able to, but
Yep.
I would rather sit there and go, great, thank you. Now I know exactly what to say and I can say it very carefully and
Yep.
clearly. And then obviously that exudes confidence and clarity. And therefore, what do? They trust you, right?
And it comes back
Because
to that art. It comes back to the art of communication, the performance aspect of this. Some people, when they go to that level of preparation and they memorize everything that they have to do, it doesn't sound genuine, right? It
yeah,
doesn't sound like a conversation. It sounds like something I memorized an hour ago. or a lookup table. If this happens, then you've got
Yeah,
a very genuine way of delivering. But let's talk a bit now about that new venture, right? Let's hit
yeah, yeah.
Ellipsys. When did you start to feel that urge to do something on your own? What was I'm sure it was a slow build. I've had that slow build for a long time and never found the right opportunity to go do, but you did it at a young age. When did
Yeah,
it
yeah.
start for you?
Yeah, so it started, I'd say, about in earnest about 18 months ago,
Mm,
18, 24 months. And it's weird. It almost like it kind of finds you. It's not the other way around. It
mm,
almost finds you can't ignore it. And I've decided that from who I married to my move to the US to a lot of the big decisions I've ever made in my life have been led by how I felt about something, whether people believe in divine intervention or not. Either way, I think everyone can agree there is a gut instinct out there that comes from somewhere. And so for me, the best decisions I ever made were the ones where I was willing to follow that and ignore the potential fear of taking a leap. And at this point, about 2 years ago, I mean, I was comfortable. Things were going great. They have always gone well. I've
yeah.
become established in the business. Focusing on delivering value, but then something's itching away. And it came from, I think, a couple of things. Once you have performed and done something, you're kind of like, okay, what next? It's quite a natural thing to happen. But then it was in some conversations with, again, John Whitmore around what we were experiencing once our customers purchased the software. We thought, it's really not that straightforward to adopt not just Nexthink, but any emerging technology. We sat there and we were talking and we were like, something? They buy it. There's that strategic vision to, evolve the business with this new way of doing things. But then the engineers on the ground, of course, are bombarded with keeping the lights on,
Yeah.
trying to do their day job. They're trying to take on projects. I mean, there's so much that people on the ground have to do, and even in the middle, right? And we were saying, like, wow, and others were saying it as well. It wasn't just me and John. There was lots of people saying the challenge of adopting emerging technology is certainly out there. And I noticed that, and I thought, again, looking at that thing on the desk, looking at it at different angles, what if there was a boutique specialist around the space?
Mm,
What if there was this? And playing with the idea over and over. And then it was also playing with and experimenting with that sort of problem while I was at Nexthink, which I started to notice a pattern when it came to actually enabling customers to be truly successful. What made them successful? Was it a process? Was it a framework? Was it a person to help them? What was it, right? So looking at that and started seeing that play out, realized I think there's a staggering need out there. And again, talking to John, and he was seeing the same thing on the East Coast, I was on the West, and we're going, yeah, there is a real opportunity here to add significantly, almost drive that value to a whole nother level. And that's where it came from. So it started to build and build, and then things naturally fell into place and working, and then finally you have to say, right, if I don't do it now,
right.
I'm going to regret it. And the timing timing's never perfect, but the timing felt right and we did it. And that's how the sort of launch happened. And so hence Ellipsys. And I'm happy to talk around like the actual concept behind it in more detail. But yeah, that's how that sort of leap came about.
Yeah, let's hit on that concept, because one of the things that has struck me as you've done this is that you've decided to stay very singularly focused on DEX.
Mm.
Um, you could have taken the things that you've learned throughout your career, the network that you've built, your capability, your skills, and said, I'm going to build a portfolio of, a dozen different products that I'll sell.
Yeah, yeah.
Nexthink being one of them, but you want to stay very singularly focused. Why? What was your thinking there, and how does that kind of play into the concept of Ellipsis and what you're looking to achieve?
Yeah, great question. So the first and foremost, the concept for Ellipsys, just to summarize it, is to enable enterprises to successfully, as I mentioned earlier, adopt a DEX platform so that they can therefore enable them to transform IT with sort of an inimitable, I would say, services wrap around that with the
Mm,
background experience we have. and therefore enable them to realize that value and go on that trajectory with all the things that digital employee experience has to offer. And so where the reasoning for staying focused on DEX, there some of them are practical reasons, and some of them are also they're things that I also believe are probably going to happen and shift in the market anyway. So the first one is, from a practical standpoint, where have I had success? Where do I know people? Where do people know me? And what am I good at now, right? And it's like, okay, we know DEX, right? That's for sure. And you sometimes have to answer the question, what's not going to change? Enterprises are always going to need best of breed emerging technology in a space of some sort. DEX is there. It's on the upswing. It's growing in popularity. It's becoming a utility in terms of its need. People have to have that understanding of consumption of IT. With the distributed workforce challenges, ongoing bombardment of new SaaS applications, constant insourcing, outsourcing, change is always going to happen in IT. So what's not going to change? Those things, right?
Yeah.
And so, right, that's what's not going to change. And that's where we saw, okay, that's going to happen. We also looked at it and thought, okay, what happens if we try do a bunch of other things? Look, focus, right? It's the best way to brand Ellipsys out the gate is not with a fancy website and showing up at events with a big expensive booth. The best brand I can have is going to be successful customers, right? Trust. And so we wanted to focus absolutely everything on making sure that as our customer base grows, our customers experience what we say we're going to deliver, and they are able to talk about it. If you think about it like this, you think about quality products, and when you hear they come from Japan, no one questions it. It's quality. It's from Japan. It's because the products are actually quality. It's not because Honda have to put a billboard saying we build successful quality cars, right? It comes from actual experience. So also there was that focus in, okay, if we want our customers to be successful in a space that we know where we are known already, let's keep it focused there. Now, eventually, yes, there is a vision to ultimately become that specialist which is known for enabling enterprises to adopt other emerging technologies in certain cases. But the final reason DEX was so powerful is because if you think about it, the laptop, desktop, etc., it's the common denominator of all of the IT that's being provided. Everything. Security, network use, and the treasure trove of data that comes from a DEX platform is absolutely staggering. So we thought if we start there, we build that trust around the DEX journey. What if we uncover other opportunities to help our customers and further enable them to be successful? Not a bad place to start, in my view.
Without a doubt, I can attest to the struggle in adoption. I've said for a long time, the technology is the easy part. It's the people that are hard. Changing how your IT operation works, understanding the technology and the tool and the how it works, and applying that to how your IT teams work, and then ingesting all of the volumes of actionable data and then making use of it and put it to good use. That's if I were to summarize that value prop that you're bringing is you've got now specialists who can help an enterprise continue to focus on keeping the lights on, the day job, while they transition through this period of going from reactive to proactive and guide them along the way. I think that's a huge value prop.
Absolutely.
When you kind of look through we talked a lot about over the shoulder, the rear view mirror. What's out in front of you? What's the mid to long term vision? Where do you see Ellipsys going in the future?
Yeah, so this is where it will go, right? I'm going to do the manifesting thing, but this is exactly where it's going to go. We will first and foremost, we will be the only premium boutique specialist provider of DEX software and services. We will be known for best-in-class experience, right? And value extraction. That's the first place. Beyond that, the vision is, as we look at the general challenge of, leveraging the great products that are out there for enterprises to evolve themselves, right? There are lots, but what I see where we're going to go is that there will be probably one or two other pillars in the future that where we will take what we have learnt even at the onset of Ellipsys in terms of the DEX space. We will then take how did we get to where we are now? Why was that successful? And then how do we sort of follow a similar journey by building out another pillar? So if the formula around this DEX platform was very successful and customers are having this great experience, they're extracting value, how do you then quickly and efficiently and cost effectively go and put that whole engine together for another space of an emerging technology? And the reason it's always emerging technology is because the software vendors spend all their money on building these amazing platforms and marketing and selling it. But they're almost they're too fast almost for the enterprises sometimes to keep up. And that's where the adoption comes in. They're not ready. So what can we do to bridge that gap? It means software companies get to market faster, right? Through a partner which is dedicated and knows how to actually successfully sell other solutions. But the benefit, most importantly, to the enterprises is they can buy products and services knowing they're going to get value really, really quickly and credibly. And that's the idea. So there are areas that we're sort of interested in. There's AI ops, there's DevOps, there's always security and compliance, etc. But again, keeping it very focused on what's on the upswing. Is it process mining for security? Is it, is it something around, endpoint security augmentation? There are all sorts of things out there. And that's where I feel like the opportunities are endless. Either way, that's what we're going to be known for. So we'll watch this space, but we're going to focus right now on the DEX space for a while. And then also listen to our customers. Maybe they tell us something like, hey, we really want to do some great stuff with Copilot. How do you get ahead of that? I was meeting with a principal engineer of Microsoft, and he was saying, you're onto something big here. If you can get out in front and find that way to add further value to what customers currently have and what they're going to buy, then they will be very successful. So, and that's the goal.
I think how I would close it is saying that the same way Nexthink differentiates themselves from the others, Ellipsys will do the same thing on the services side. And I wish you nothing but huge success. What's the best way for folks to connect with you and find you?
Yeah, of course. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm on there. So my contact information is on there. And yeah, I'd happily either connect or network, whatever it may be. But yeah, more than happy to engage. And whether you're in the UK or in the US, there will be a way in which we somehow get together. So yeah, I'm at least friendly in that capacity. So yeah, no, appreciate it.
Outstanding. Seth, always great to talk with you. Happy to help promote this new thing for you, and wishing you nothing but the best. And for everyone watching and listening, I know it's been a minute since we posted. Back on track a little bit, and we'll talk to everybody soon. Take it easy.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Take care.